Quick disclaimer. The recording that will follow after this message is based only on my having seen the first episode of this show. At the time, my opinion was very positive. Since then, however, I have seen most of the rest of the show, I have like 2 episodes left or whatever, and my opinion has drastically dropped. And I'll be discussing that plenty, but I was thinking, if ultimately I did not like the show, should I even keep the recording of my initial positive reaction to it? And I've decided yes, okay, I'll keep it. Because recently people on here have been telling me that I only shit on stuff. Let that serve as your fucking evidence that when I have something positive to say, I'm more than happy to do it. Keep in mind though, the recording that will follow should only be treated as sort of a time capsule, where I still liked the show and had not seen most of it yet. My overall opinion of it now is very negative. Bitch about it as you may, but I will shit on this fucking show. And mind you, it's not because I'm a negative person, it's because the Three Body novels mean the world to me. If this was some random fucking show that was unrelated, I never would have even watched it, let alone fucking review it. But this is supposed to be an adaptation of what I consider to be the greatest book trilogy of all time. And since it is, I will give my honest opinion of it, and that's that. Without further ado, here's the original recording of the opinion that I had after seeing the first episode only. So I finished reading the Three Body trilogy a few days ago, and now I think they're the greatest books I ever read in my life. And I knew the show was coming out just as I was reading them, and oh boy did I stay the fuck away from even looking at that show. First of all, because I heard these 2 idiots, David and Dan, were making it, and after Game of Thrones ended, I didn't want to see anything from these fucks ever again. And second of all, because the books gave me such a life-shattering experience, I did not want anything in the world to ruin it for me. And film and TV adaptations usually do it. Like, the interpretation of the TV version gets stuck in my mind, even the actors' faces, and the music, and the way events are portrayed, everything. And then when I go and check out the books, my brain has these preconceived TV notions about the story, and they interfere with my own interpretation that I would have otherwise gotten in a genuine manner on my own, through reading the books. And so, because when the show was released, I was somewhere in the middle of reading the second book, I decided that I wanted to first finish the books by myself, so that I can keep the experience as genuine as possible in my personal visualization, if that makes sense. Anyway, no regrets there. The books were masterpieces, and I experienced them all by myself, without any TV interpretation meddling in my visualization, and I will treasure this experience till the day I die. Now then, I finished the books. I waited for a few days to pass so that my brain overcomes the shock and horror, and so now I'm ready to watch the show. Mind you, while I was reading the books, I kept hearing that the show was trash, and this was from book readers. From non-book readers, I kept hearing that they liked it and thought it was fine, which sounds bad to me. For such a monumental story to just be described as likable makes the show sound extremely mediocre, which in turn made me even more paranoid in avoiding seeing anything from it. And so, this evening, I started watching the show. I already saw the first episode, and before I started, I took a deep breath and I braced myself for a big pile of garbage. And then, I was pleasantly surprised. Again, I have now only seen the first episode, so my current evaluation is not at all in depth, nor is it final. And the episode wasn't that perfect or whatever, I have problems with it, but it's not a flaming pile of garbage for sure. I actually really enjoyed it, and it totally surpassed my expectations. Back a few months I was reading some reviews on IMDb and people kept complaining that it's not faithful to the book, and I mean, it's not completely the same of course, but overall, the outline is so far pretty similar, and especially the stuff with Ye Wenjie, which, forgive me about my pronunciation of all the Chinese names, but I'm probably gonna butcher all of them. Anyway, let me get to the first point, which is the thing I love the most in this first episode, the storyline of Ye Wenjie precisely. I have to say, the show's depiction is extremely close to what I was imagining while reading the book. Mind you, I mean mostly visually, because in terms of pacing, this fucking show is moving at speed light. In the show, Ye Wenjie gets to Red Coast Base in like 40 minutes or something. To get to that point in the first book, I felt like I had to cross an ocean of horrible stuff that happens to her first. And that's not to say that the show depiction was bad. Just because the book dragged it on way longer doesn't mean that the show is wrong for moving it faster. Or maybe I'm just a slow reader, who cares? In any case, the depiction of Yeowanzia during the Cultural Revolution was great, and I got shivers down my spine when she got called by the Red Guard by name while holding her father's corpse, and she just looked up at the girls with the most death-radiating facial expression one could give. This was the very fucking moment that decided the fate of the entire solar system some 400 years later, and it was just amazing. What else did I love? The intro was amazing. The intro sequence was exactly how I felt every single time that I sat down to open the books and continue reading. Just a sense of the cosmic void all around you, with random planetary trash and stars just whipping by on the tidal waves of time. Absolutely brilliant. And the music as well, I didn't know that, but apparently Ramin Djawadi is the composer, and when it comes to this man, I consider him to be the god emperor of soundtracks. Very, very few people can compare to him in my opinion, and sometimes I even wonder if they can. I always struggle to decide who is the composer love of my life. Whether it's him, or Hans Zimmer, or Howard Shore, or James Horner, or whatever, it's always gonna be an internal battle for me. But one thing is certain, and it's that Ramin Djawadi is right up there within the pantheon of the gods of music. Oh my god, and my favorite moment in this episode. Our first time entering the three-body game was exquisite. I'm such a sucker for visuals. The view of the pyramid, the insanely scorching sunrise, and the dehydrated bodies buried in the sand. I loved every second of that. I thought it was breathtaking. It didn't exactly match my own interpretation of it, but who cares? It was still a fantastic achievement. Anything else that I liked particularly? Well, I guess the actors are fine. None of them are overacting or whatever. And of course, we have a big part of the Game of Thrones crew, which I guess I have one problem with that. Thomas Wade, one of the most brutal and fascinating characters in the books, is played by Sir Davos. I don't know why, I just can't perceive him in this role, or at least not yet. I guess he can grow on me in time. Now, elements that I did not like that much. There's of course several of these. First, the show moves a bit too quickly along the story for me, which I guess is just a me problem. I like my stories to develop slowly. Second, I think it makes me feel, like woke for Asians, meaning as in, reading those books made me perceive the story as inherently Chinese, especially in the first book. And this was also one of the elements that I kinda loved about it even more, because before that I'd never read Chinese literature, and it was a delight for me to experience a different literary world from what I've been used to reading my whole life. And then in this show, it's kind of like they stole it from China and brought it over to the UK, to the point of even Yeowanzia living in the fucking UK. And all the scientists and other main characters in the book are Chinese as well. And then in this show, almost everyone's from Britain. I guess it might have been for practical purposes, because why would they bother to film in China? Or maybe it's some stupid problem with CCP regulations or whatever. Or they wanted to make it digestible for Western culture or whatever, I don't know. I only know that I didn't like it, and I wanted the show to be just as Chinese as the books. However, I guess I can live with that, it's fine. And besides, I'm also gonna watch the Chinese version of the show afterwards, so that's that. Another thing that I kind of hated is, of course, them somewhat glossing over the science. That is, at least as far as I understand, science in the first place. But the episode ended with the scene of the universe flickering. And in the show, they literally made the entire fucking sky flicker, which was not at all the case in the book. In the book, I remember that the aliens made the cosmic microwave background visible and flickering, and only so through special glasses that the character had to acquire first. So what they should have seen was just some dispersed patches of vague light across the sky, and only through special goggles. They shouldn't have seen the entire fucking Milky Way galaxy visible and flickering all across the world. Can you imagine what that would cause all over the planet? By this chain of events, from this point on in the show, which is the very beginning, everyone in the world should get scared shitless, causing complete panic. And then Thomas Wade sees the flickering and says, "This is our enemy." What? How the fuck do you know already? Are you the fucking alien police or something? And the girl seeing the timer across her point of view. Jesus Christ, the numbers are not supposed to be that fucking big and intrusive. How does she not walk into a street pole every 10 meters? I think in the book, the character who was experiencing this only saw the countdown as tiny numbers in like the corner of his eye or something, like a little timestamp. And he began to see them very gradually, as in first noticing them in photographs or whatever. It was really tastefully done, which made it all the more horrifying. But anyway, I still liked the start of this show a lot. It was really good, and I'm very eager to watch the second episode, so I'll be back with my rants after I see that too.